Going Beyond is a presentation of Beyond Housing, helping entire communities become better places to live with RareGem Productions. Reliance Bank, your locally owned hometown bank, is pleased to sponsor today's Going Beyond radio show. With 20 locations throughout the St. Louis area, Reliance Bank is making money a little friendlier.
Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
We're going beyond.
Today on Going Beyond.
Today we're going to continue our conversation with Reverend Traci Blackmon from Christ the King UCC Church. We're going to really talk about long-term solutions. We finished a conversation about the here and now, but more importantly, you'll hear from Reverend Blackmon about her thoughts and ideas about how do we change systems.
I recognize that what we're talking about as a long-term goal is changing perceptions and changing hearts and changing beliefs. And it plays out on both sides, right? So if you've never had to live that experience that you just described, then it is difficult for you also to understand the suspicion of law enforcement or the way that African Americans are likely to believe right away that this is possible, that law enforcement would act in a way that is not just and that is not fair and that is not equitable.
Beyond Housing is going beyond.
That and more ahead today on Going Beyond with Chris Krehmeyer, right after this. Reliance Bank is focused on meeting the banking needs of the entire St. Louis community. That's because Reliance Bank, unlike the big national banks, is locally owned and operated. It's run by people you know, and that's important when you're looking for a personal checking account that's really free, a mortgage, or a loan for your business. So stop in and introduce yourself at one of their 20 branches throughout the St. Louis area. Reliance Bank, making money a little friendlier.
Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
I'm Chris King, managing editor for the St. Louis American newspaper. I believe good stories can be complicated and complicated stories can be good, and I believe in going beyond.
We're going beyond. Welcome to this edition of Going Beyond. I'm your host, Chris Krehmeyer, President and CEO of Beyond Housing. Today we're going to continue our conversation with Reverend Traci Blackmon from Christ the King UCC Church. We're going to really talk about long-term solutions to what happens next after Fergusson.
I recognize that what we're talking about as a long-term goal is changing perceptions and changing hearts and changing beliefs. And it plays out on both sides, right? So if you've never had to live that experience that you just described, then it is difficult for you also to understand the suspicion of law enforcement or the way that African Americans are likely to believe right away that this is possible, that law enforcement would act in a way that is not just and that is not fair and that is not equitable because of those experiences.
Right.
But I agree with the change of belief that's going to come with relationships, but I am also concerned about the immediate change in behavior. So I'm in a place now, whether you like me or not, there's a certain way that you're going to have to behave. Whether you like my children or not, there's a certain way that you're going to have to behave. And as adults, if we're honest, we probably do some of that on our jobs already. It may not be that we like everyone that we work with.
Right.
It may not be that we would be friends with everyone that we work with. But in order to be employed in the ways that we are, there's a certain amount of professionalism and a certain amount of a certain degree of ethical behavior that has to take place there. And I am concerned about holding people accountable for that. So, yes, I want relationships to develop. Yes, I want beliefs to change. I want us to really become friends. But right now, I want your behavior to change.
So tell me what that looks like, right? When you say I want people to be held accountable, what does that look like, and kind of what are you thinking when you say my expectations are that people are going to be accountable for their actions? What does that look like?
What it looks like in this particular case is that if an 18-year-old black male is in the middle of the street with his, well, let's go even beyond that. Let's go to what we know is true, because there are many things we don't know for a fact about this case yet. What it looks like is that if a black male and his friend are walking in the middle of the street in an area where there are no sidewalks, and they are on their way home, that the expectation that they could arrive safely at home without being stopped by the police would be the same as if they are not black.
Right.
That's what behavior looks like to me.
Right.
What behavior looks like to me is that just as if you were in a white residential area and there were other people around and you were in a residential area, that your decision whether or not you would shoot if you're not being shot at, that your decision about that would take into consideration who else might be hurt or harmed, or how your firing your gun in a residential area might impact other bystanders, would be the same consideration as you would have if you were in an area that were not predominantly African American.
Right.
The fact that you would shoot rather than taser when there's more than one officer on the scene of an unarmed man with his hands up in the air, whether he is coming towards you or whether he is standing still. He has no gun, that you would shoot rather than taser him or stop him in some other way if you thought you were threatened. I want the same behavior that you would have if he were not African American to happen in his situation as well. The notion that you would put out a video implying, or whether it's real or not, that he has been into a store and he stole something, at the same time that you release the officer's name who has killed him and he is unarmed, and then admit that the officer had no knowledge of that tape when the stop happened, that would not happen if he was not African American. The fact that in the United States of America, that a black man who is killed goes on trial, even though he is the dead person,
right.
And not just in this case, but in Trayvon Martin case, in the Sean Bell case, in every case, that doesn't happen unless it's an African American. Those are the behaviors that have to change. And I can go to some personal experiences, Chris. I remember 2 years ago, there was a 14-year-old girl who I was associated with through my church. She was not my member, but her mother was a friend of mine from the church that I was in previously. And the little girl ran away, but she was 14 years old. She did run away, but she was 14 years old. And I personally went with this mother to the Florissant Police Department, who said that they would not look for her, would not try to help find her, because if she was 14, they weren't going to do that. That's unacceptable. She's 14.
Right.
So we had to go out, her mother and I had to go out on social media and then get leads, knock on doors ourselves to find her. And we did find her.
Right, right.
Had she been a white little girl, I'm not sure that reaction would have been the same.
So, Reverend, when you talk about systems change, which is really what you're describing now, what's your delivery mechanism to begin this systems change? Right. So we want accountability. We want accountability all throughout the system for fairness and equity and justice. So what does that look like as you move forward, right? As someone who's been doing this for a while and is in a lot of different conversations. What does that look like as it relates to systems change? And if our listeners are interested in becoming involved in this kind of systems change. So we really have two big things that sound like you're working on right now, right? And that's addressing with respect the people that live at Canfield and what they're going through today and how collectively we can help them, because again they're right there on the ground every day, and there's things that we can do to be both respectful and helpful to them. But then you also have systems change. So if our listeners are interested in getting engaged in either one of those things that you've described so eloquently, please let us know how they might be able to get engaged.
So this is the plan that I have every intention. I hadn't rolled it out yet, Chris, but let's go now. My area of work is in the faith communities. And so if we really want to see systems change, we have to understand that our power is in the vote. And our power is in those people that we put into offices. And they have to know that they are our employees, that they work for us. and that we have expectations of what they will do. What that looks like in the realm that I work is I'm going to be pushing churches to begin social action committees in their churches. And I'm not sure social action is the right word, but I'll describe to you what I mean. Having ministries in our churches that during off seasons of elections and during times of elections, that when policies are brought forth, that they have the responsibility of researching those policies thoroughly and putting them in a language that everyone in the church can understand. When candidates are running for office, from judges, no matter what the office is, not just our major offices, that they would have responsibility for vetting those candidates and presenting that information, not telling people how to vote, not telling them what direction they should go in, but presenting the information in ways that people can understand it so that we become agents of our own change in these neighborhoods. You know, it does not get lost that the voting of African Americans in Ferguson is low. And so if you don't use your power to vote and impact who's getting in office, impact the policies that are coming down, then we're fighting an uphill battle. So I think this is a clarion call to us, first to register as many people as we can to vote, and then to turn out those registered voters for every election so that the representation of you in policy, the representation of you even in law enforcement begins to look more like your neighborhood. When you begin to look more like the people you serve, then some of that relationship building that you're talking about begins to happen naturally, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And so we have to take responsibility for that. And so one of the ways to do that is to get churches to have these social action committees, to train them as a unit, and then have them present in every church that will take part in that, to have that ministry contribute financially to a large pool of money so that we have money to do research, we have money to vet those candidates, and we began to make our voice known. The other part of that we did a few years ago for the presidential elections, we did it for the mayoral election, is an effort called Souls to the Polls, to revive that, to make sure that every citizen has a way to the poll, has a way to go exercise their right to vote. I'm not even concerned about the ability to tell people, well, you should vote for this person or you should not vote for this person. I think that people are quite intelligent in their way, and they'll vote their own interests as long as they understand the issues. And so for me, that is one of the focuses that the church has to begin to have. We've adopted this phrase during this Michael Brown Rise for Justice called Praying with Our Feet. And it's a website that we started exactly for to connect everyone around Michael Brown issues so that you could go to this website, see what was going on, and get involved communally. But I want to keep that website going to have information about candidates, who has done what is their background, how can you get a ride to the polls, all the things that affect our neighborhood. We have got to stop just having our voice on the air or publicly, but having our voice in the polls.
And what's that website address if our listeners want to check out
www.prayingwithourfeet.org.
Wonderful.
Prayingwithourfeet.org.
All right, so we have systems change. We have a call to action to get people registered, but more importantly, get them out to vote and have them be aware of the issues, be aware of the candidates. It certainly sounds like something that the faith community has done historically, and sounds like we're going to re-energize that part of what the faith community did for many, many years. Is there anything you want to tell our listeners about what they can do to help the folks in Canfield that will be constructive and helpful?
I think what would be most constructive and helpful is to be mindful at this point that while the people in Canfield are just as passionate about pursuing justice for Mike Brown as everyone else is, and for pursuing justice in other areas of inequity in Fergusson and beyond, that it is their residents. So ask their permission, even to help them. Ask their permission.
Wonderful. Reverend Traci Blackmon, pastor at Christ the King UCC, thank you so much for your voice, for your leadership, and giving folks a way to get plugged in a way that hopefully will lead to long-lasting change. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Chris. Talk to you later.
Reliance Bank is pleased to sponsor today's Going Beyond radio show. With 20 locations throughout the St. Louis area, Reliance Bank, your locally owned hometown bank, is making money a little friendlier.
Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
We're going beyond.
Going Beyond is a presentation of Beyond Housing, helping entire communities become better places to live with RareGem Productions. Proudly promoting, presenting, and producing positive programming.
Neighborhood is where you live, and we want to keep it strong and vibrant. This is Chris Krehmeyer with Beyond Housing. We are going beyond.
Chris Krehmeyer, President and CEO of Beyond Housing, located at 4156 Manchester, phone number 314-533-0600. The only organization in the St. Louis region that offers access to affordable housing. Wherever we work, our goal is to help transform people, families, and communities so that they achieve the skills, strategies, resources, and commitment to succeed for the long term. See our work at beyondhousing.org. Podcast for Going Beyond can be heard, downloaded, and shared by visiting hallelujah1600.com. Listed under the music tab, on demand. Going Beyond is another positive production of RareGem Productions.